by the way.
No laughing, Elvia.
Greg was just sharing with me that you are not allowed to use "there's always next year" phrase unless you're a Cubs fan,
Oh.
according to Greg.
We have it on copyright.
All right.
Well, it must have worked because didn't the Cubs just clinch a spot in the first round?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we ready to go, Elvia?
We are, Mayor. Anytime you're ready.
Thank you. Welcome to our September 22nd, 2020 regular City Council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. For the audience tonight, I am the mayor and serve as presiding officer for tonight's meeting. Tonight's public meeting will be conducted utilizing Zoom video communications. This allows the city to continue to conduct essential business and comply with public health administration recommendations to protect the public and city employees practicing social distancing and limiting exposure by not allowing in-person meetings, public meetings. To ensure that the public will be able to participate, public comment can be submitted as live comments during the Zoom meeting and via email at publiccomments@cityofglendora.org. A brief lineup for tonight's meeting will include two special items. First, presentation on health and wellness from Counseling Team International, and update on the COVID-19. 3 items listed under consent. One is award of a contract for the Chamber of Commerce's roof replacement, 1 unfinished business, 2 new business items, and 1 closed session item with anticipated litigation. We'll have 2 public comment periods, 1 at the beginning of our meeting and 1 at the end of the one at the end of the meeting if we miss the first, meeting or the first opportunity. Last week, we released our latest Minute with the Mayor concerning coyotes and working with Inland Valley Humane Society. We continue to work through the logistic issues with IVHS as we prepare our proposed coyote management plan that will be introduced for discussion at our October 13th City Council meeting. The video actually stated the 16th, and this is a correction to it. Madam Deputy City Clerk, will you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At this time, I would like to conduct an oral roll call and request that each council member respond with present when their name is called. Councilmember Thompson.
Present.
Councilmember Boyer.
Present.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Present.
And Mayor Alawas.
Present.
All members are present. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Elvia. At this time, I'd like to invite Monica Knudsen of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints to give us the invocation.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be gathered here this evening as a city council and community of Glendora, California. And we're so grateful for the opportunity we do have to gather and to discuss the needs of our city this night. And we're so grateful for our beautiful town and for all the wonderful feelings of community and love that we have here together. And we are grateful for the beauty of this land and all that it provides for us. But we are also aware of the fires that are going on near our homes and for those surrounding cities and for those firefighters and other first responders that are dealing with those at this time. And we pray for them and their safety and for all the people and animals who are evacuated and displaced at this time, and pray that they might be given the peace and comfort that they need to deal with these challenges that they face. And we also are aware of a pandemic that still continues to be in our nation and in the world. And we pray for those that are affected by that as well. And again, are so grateful for all of those that work tirelessly to help fight that battle and to help people who are affected to be well and to provide the goods and services that are needed for that. And we pray for our local and state and national leaders as we continue to try and solve those problems. Father, at this time, we pray for thy spirit to be upon this meeting this night, that we'll be blessed with thy spirit to help guide the conversations and the issues that are being discussed, that the right solutions will be found, and the things that will help our community continue to thrive and be the wonderful place that it is to all of us, and the home that it is to all of us. We are so grateful again for all of our many blessings and all the things which thou continues to give to us. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Thank you, Monica.
You're
And the
welcome.
Pledge of Allegiance will be conducted by our very own city manager, Mr. Adam Raymond.
For those of you who can stand, please do. Place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Adam. This brings us now to our special items. I'd like to invite up Dr. Tammy McCoy from the Counseling Team International to give a presentation.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be a guest at this very important meeting. I'm Dr. Tammy McCoy. I'm a clinical forensic psychologist with the Counseling Team International, which is a really fancy way of saying I take care of people for a living. As we are still in the midst of some of the most uncertain times in record, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about some of the things that most people are experiencing right now, some opportunities to help you as you navigate these really difficult times, and give you some perspective on some red flags for when you should probably seek treatment from a mental health professional, okay? These are unprecedented times. There is uncertainty, there is fear, there is anxiety, there is sadness. Our children have been robbed of the opportunity to go to school through no fault of their own. Parents are struggling with the decisions of how to navigate homeschooling with careers and busy lives. Families are under economic challenges because of the unemployment created by COVID. Being isolated from a lot of our family and friends, creating stress by not being able to be in touch with those people who we really enjoy. We are social animals. We need to be with other people. And the isolation that this has created has not come without its emotional consequences. Feeling isolated, feeling alone, not being able to connect with friends and family creates a myriad of psychological problems, depression and anxiety being among the two most common ones. We've also seen in recent months an increase in the use of substances, especially alcohol. Alcohol is the most socially acceptable drug in our culture, and we have seen a huge increase in the use of alcohol and day drinking becoming more socially acceptable because many people are staying at home. That is creating also an increase in depression, creating an increase in family conflict, and an increase in domestic violence. Not uncommon in times of uncertainty is also an increase in anxiety, not knowing when we're going to be able to go back to a sense of normalcy, when we'll be able to see the people that we love again without being a health risk, when we'll be able to resume those things that we really enjoy in life, like being able to go to the gym or being able to gather. It has created for a lot of us conundrums, the likes of which we have never anticipated. As we navigate that, I want you to know one thing to be true. It is okay to have emotional reactions to this. It's okay to be sad, to be scared, to have that uncertainty and that anxiety. There's no such thing as a feeling being wrong. Most people have reported to me in my civilian life as well as in my professional life that they're embarrassed because they're having these emotional reactions. And a lot of people kind of joke that they shouldn't be feeling so much. I would submit the opposite is true. You would be crazy not to have all these feelings, to not be confused, to not be struggling. This is a difficult time. Everything in our life has been turned upside down and backwards. So first and foremost, I would suggest be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to have whatever reactions you're having and don't judge yourself for it. It's okay not to be okay. The second thing I would really encourage is making sure that you're exercising, whether that's doing push-ups in your garage, taking walks around the block. Getting that opportunity to get some sweat equity is going to help maintain stability of mood. When we exercise, we get dopamine and serotonin up and running, and we feel a sense of accomplishment. And it puts us in a more positive place. It is clinically one of the most reliable things we can do to improve how we feel about ourselves. The other thing I really want to encourage people to do is make sure that they're eating properly. There are a lot of people who joke around about the COVID-15, and it's understandable with being at home a lot, we're emotional eating, we're treating ourselves with food, with alcohol. Please consider that the food you put in your body has a direct impact on your mood, not just the food and the chemicals in the food, but the way we feel about ourselves. When we eat right, when we exercise, when we drink plenty of water, we feel better about ourselves. We set ourselves up for success. So as a start, I mean, those very basic fundamental things we can do right away. A lot of people report having difficulty sleeping appropriately, that they either sleeping too much or they're having a hard time staying under. Exercise and a healthy diet can really help balance that out. When we don't get proper sleep, and I mean less than 6 hours of solid sleep, it directly affects our body's ability to regulate our mood. We become more irritable, we're more prone to feeling sad, our body's cortisol levels go up, the stress hormone. So exercise, sleeping, eating right, all those things are going to set our bodies up for success. Having people that we can talk to and talk about what's going on is really important right now. And a lot of people are feeling like, oh, I don't want to burden the people in my life because they're struggling as well. We all have to gauge the people in our life and make very important decisions about who we share what with. When we don't feel comfortable talking, the next best thing is to find another outlet, find a healthy way, whether that's blogging or writing in a journal or writing things down on a piece of paper just to express the emotions, whether that's sadness, whether that's happiness, whether that's anxiety or fear. Being able to process those emotions in an environment where there's nobody judging is really, really important to our well-being. There is a release that comes with putting something on a piece of paper or being able to just say it or scream it or shout it in your living room. Being able to let that feeling out, there's a catharsis there that can't be underestimated, the value of which. With our families, and a lot of people are struggling with getting along together because we're spending so much more time together. Recognize that taking breaks from each other, whether that's to take a walk around the block or to run an errand, can be really healthy, but also getting outside the house, right? Going in the backyard and maybe having a picnic dinner. We're all struggling with how to be together and not be on top of each other. Know that in a healthy relationship, it's okay to take a break and to do something for you that's independent of the family. And for a lot of us moms out there, the struggle is, oh, my kids are constantly needing my attention. It's okay to lock the bathroom door for 5 minutes. Setting those healthy boundaries. And I know we feel guilty about doing that. We have 2 boys, and sometimes the struggle was, oh, am I being a bad parent by taking these breaks? I would submit that being happy and healthy makes you a better parent. So taking 5 minutes is really going to help you out. Our kids are going to frustrate us just as well as our spouses. It's okay to take a break, to take 5 minutes, and to just take a few deep breaths. There's a lot of great apps out there that are free that really focus just on deep breathing and relaxation. Apps called Headspace, apps called Calm, specifically are really, really great ways to just kind of decompress a little bit and de-stress. Sometimes our minds get so overwhelmed by all the input we've got, and we get overwhelmed. And then we say something we regret, or we yell, or we lose our temper a little bit. And then we feel horrible because we regroup and we go, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. If we take breaks and we listen to our body and our warning signs that, oh, I'm getting frustrated, I'm getting annoyed, using one of these apps in those moments can be super valuable, just to give ourselves an opportunity to take a moment, get some perspective, and get a break. There's no such thing as a perfect family. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. I think we hold ourselves in our society to these incredibly high standards. And then when we don't meet them, we become really angry and hurt with ourselves. Again, please, you don't need to be perfect. You need to be just good enough, right? Just imperfect enough. Perfection doesn't exist. And when we don't meet those ridiculously high expectations, the consequence is we hurt ourselves, right? So I would really encourage you to give yourself credit for the things that you are doing right. And when you fall short of your own expectations, give yourself a break. These are extraordinary times and we do the best that we can. So when should you seek help? And that's a really important question. I would submit that when you start to feel hopeless, when you're experiencing panic attacks, when your anxiety or your feelings of being depressed are getting in the way of your daily life, your ability to take care of yourself, when you start to think about hurting yourself, when you start to lose control, lose your temper, when your drinking or eating habits are getting out of control, that might be a really good time to get a checkup from a neck up with a mental health professional. These things don't mean that you're crazy. They don't mean that you're defective. They just mean you need a little extra support right now. And that's okay. If ever there was a time when we all needed a little extra support, it's now. Please don't feel ashamed for asking for the help that you deserve. And with that, if any of you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. McCoy. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Thank you so much for that. It's a timely report.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.
You too now.
Next up is our item number 2, the COVID-19 reopening economic update. Adam was going to report.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. We'll try to make this quick. Next slide, please. As you can see below, it feels like we've been providing the update forever because we have. And a few changes that have come up and wanted to sort of share those and some expectations on timelines. Next slide, please. So just a quick reminder, the state a couple weeks ago changed the way it's going to propose to reopen California. The counties still have the final say on what can reopen, but the state has gone to a color coordinated system. Next slide, please. That system basically indicates that you can move from purple, where LA County is now, into red, and then orange, and then yellow. Yellow being the ultimate stage at this point, which isn't a full reopening, but provides for a lot more freedom of economic operations, so long as the counties also allow it. Based on current trends and timelines and allowances, the earliest that LA County could reach that yellow stage is probably looking at mid-November to early December at this point. Statistics are updated every Tuesday, and we got our recent updates today. So with that, next slide, please. Just a quick reminder of the categories we talked about. Looks at 2 main data points: new cases per 100,000 people and positive test rates. One of the things LA County has really done is provided a lot of testing to a great many people, especially essential workers, have access to free testing regardless if they're symptomatic or not. And in doing so, have really driven down the overall positivity rate. New cases per 100,000 have dropped, but we'll look at what happens at the county level. To get out of the first tier, you must be less or equal to 7 cases. And then you see the data thresholds. You must stay at these areas for at least 2 weeks, but you must be in each tier a minimum of 3 weeks. So when things reopened too quickly last time, you saw the surge in cases and hospitalization. So the state's new plan's goal is to not do that. Next slide, please. So where are we? The data released this afternoon shows that LA County has a new case rate of 7.7, but an adjusted rate of 7. And that is because of the amount of testing that's done. The keynote there is the positivity rate of 2.8%, which would qualify us for the second to last tier. However, the new case rate is too high. We must stay where we are at right now for 2 weeks before Los Angeles County can move into the red category, which would allow the county to open up some additional economic areas, including allow more freedom of schools to open. And with that, next slide, please. So just a quick reminder in LA County, and we've gotten quite a bit of questions on this of late, K-12 schools cannot apply for a waiver. Both private and public schools, the county will not allow to open other than small cohorts of what they are referring to as at-risk youth, meaning those students with special needs, for example, that have an IEP plan, and then an IE plan, excuse me, and then additionally those with English language difficulties. So additionally, hair salons and barbershops are allowed to open in indoor capacity of up to 25%. The county has not adhered itself to some additional allowances under the state's plan, which we'll talk about next. Currently, all retail is allowed to be open up to 25% capacity in shopping centers. Today, the state announced that nail salons may also reopen. The County of Los Angeles has not allowed any of those three criteria to happen, with the sole purpose of focusing on getting kids back into school. So what we've heard from the county last week, the week before, and this week is that in order to continue the reopening of schools, we need to continue to drive down the new infections per 100,000, and they believe keeping these activities not open for indoor use as of this time will help that. So again, where we're at, we need to stay at for 2 weeks before Los Angeles County can get into the red category, and the county may consider additional economic reopenings. Next slide, please. So just a quick reminder, in the city, we must follow the County of Los Angeles. Newsom issued an executive order at the start of this, which provides the authority on reopening not to the state, but the state sets sort of the ceiling and the counties are allowed to set the floor. The city could, for example, set additional restrictions, but to date, the city has not done that. We have really taken an educational approach with all the businesses and any other sports leagues or things that we run into that may have questions. Next slide, please. We are happy to announce, though, and one of the things that's been coming for a while is a reopening of city facilities on a limited basis. So starting today and next Thursday, the Bidwell Forum will be open as a computer lab. We'll have both those walk-ins and then reservations that will be allowed. You also have some additional library service considerations that are in there. The hours of operation are from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Many of you may have seen the social media posts this morning. Starting next week on Tuesday and Thursday, we will be reopening City Hall, the police station, the transportation center from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, the face masks are required. All city facilities will ask for checks of your temperature and all those things you're accustomed to and many other places you go. And we'll look to try to move all locations open for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and mid-October as we evaluate some of our protocols and how things are going and take a reassessment before we can open to the public for just coming in whenever they need to further. As has been the case since the pandemic started, staff is available via appointment, phone call, video conference, email, etc., Monday through Friday from normal working hours, 8 to 5 p.m., and oftentimes many hours outside of those as well. So excited to move forward on some of those fronts. Special thank you to the employees, the employee unions, and a lot of the staff that's on the call this evening working really hard to ensure we're protecting both the employees and anyone coming into City Hall. Next slide, please. So as always, more information. We really urge people to head to the city's website. And if you have questions, please ask. I know Joe Cena's on the call tonight, and I know he fields just as many calls as I do on a regular basis for what can be allowed to open. And we definitely appreciate the Chamber's partnership. They've been incredible through this process. Next slide, please. And with that, any questions? And just, we understand that as this goes on further and further, the level of frustration in the community rises, not just in Glendora, but all throughout, the state and the country. And we understand that, we have all been asked for a great many sacrifices, and some people have suffered more than others. And we just, again, try to really keep the approach of education, try to keep the lookout for what we can do to help. There's a CDBG item on this evening, which also stems to further help those in need. So with that, open it up for any questions and turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Adam. Does anyone on council? Gary?
Yeah, actually, Adam, we've all been fielding questions from people who they want to see kids going back to school. They want to see the businesses opening. We continually share with people the fact that we didn't put any restrictions in the city of Glendora, so we don't have the authority to remove any of them.
Correct.
do you have any recommendations for people to what they can do? Because people feel the need to be proactive, to try to encourage the decision makers that it's time to take another look at this. Do you have any recommendations as to who people should be reaching out to?
So for those people in Los Angeles County, the Board of Supervisors meets every Tuesday. They did not meet this Tuesday or this morning, but they will meet next Tuesday. And on those Tuesdays, they have a standing item for economic reopenings. Be more than happy to pass along any correspondence that we receive here at a city level to those policy and decision makers at the county level as well. The city council has advocated before to both the state and county for a proactive reopening, to open up the things that are allowed. And so I think it's important for the public to understand that from the city's perspective, we have asked the county to do those things, but the more voices, the better. And if you have questions, ask. I mean, we can point, not that people want to look at 18 pages of reopening criteria for schools, but I think it's important to understand that, you know, schools have a tall task in front of them, even when they're allowed to open. But advocate with your county representative. At this point, that is our best chance for additional reopenings. If the county adheres us to the state guidelines, for example, additional retail and malls would be allowed to open for additional indoor use in addition to nail salons today. So I think people, I mean, as we go around, I think people are more accustomed to wearing a face mask now than they ever have been. You see a lot of compliance. We don't have too many issues there. And really people have taken some extraordinary steps. I know a lot of businesses in town have done a phenomenal job. So really my recommendation is advocate with the county representative, or let the city know, and be happy to pass along those requests as well.
Anyone else have any questions? No? Thank you, Adam. So we have no student reports. And our city manager, do you have something to add? City attorney, I mean?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I need to request that the council add an urgency closed session agenda at tonight's meeting. We have received some recent communications regarding the so-called party house in Glendora that we feel like we need to share with the council. The need to add this closed session is that these communications happen today. The reason that we can't wait until the next council meeting is that our next court hearing will occur early next week, and our additional court filings will have to be by the end of this week. So we're asking the council's permission to add a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1 to confer with legal counsel regarding one matter of pending litigation to which the city is a party. The title of that litigation is Glendora versus Charles Cao, CAO, and Olivia Zhao, ZHAO, Los Angeles County Superior Court case number 20 PSCV 00556. It will take a motion and 4 affirmative votes to add this to the closed session agenda, and we would request consideration of them at the conclusion of this added item at the conclusion of the regular closed session agenda item. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Bill. Do we have a motion to move Bill's?
Yeah, this is Gary. I'll move that we add that that item to our closed session at the end of this meeting.
Do we have a second?
Mendel, second.
Madam Deputy City Clerk, can you take a roll call vote, please? You're muted. You're muted, Elvia.
Okay, sorry. Yes, at this time I will take a roll call vote. We have a motion by Gary Boyer, second by Mendel Thompson, and we'll take a vote. Councilmember Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
And Mayor Alawas?
Yes.
And it passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
council.
Elvia. Thank you, Bill. We have no student reports tonight, so I'm going to open up public comment. You may give public comment once during one of the 2 public comment periods scheduled. The first will occur at the beginning prior to consideration of any agenda item, and the second will be at the end of the meeting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once on both on and off agenda items. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. Please address your comments to me, the presiding officer. Public comment is limited to 30 minutes. If you'd like to request to speak, select the raise hand icon in the Zoom. Before the close of the public comment period, you will then be called on when it's your turn up to speak. Deputy City Clerk, do we have any folks that want to speak? I see that Joe has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I do want to announce that we received 2 emails prior to 4 o'clock that were published and made part of the agenda packet and are available to the public to view. In addition, we did receive 1 email at right 5 o'clock requesting that it be read into the record. So at this time, I think I'll read this first and then we can go to the next folks. Is that okay?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I will be reading this one. Dear City Council, my name is Michelle Cruz. I'd like to express my feeling about Proposition 16 and urge anyone who is disgusted by racial discrimination to vote against it on November 3rd. Proposition 16 is against the law and is legalizing discrimination. Please help to stop discrimination of any race in our community and in our state. I believe we should treat everyone equally, give them the opportunity to become successful in this great state. Vote no on Proposition 16. Please read out my comments in the meeting. This is from Michelle Cruz.
Thank you, Elvia.
Yes, and now we've got Joe Cena. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, you've got 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Alois and Council. Sorry, I'm talking to everybody that probably knows everything I'm going to talk about, but here I go. The Chamber, my team and I, we continue to help move forward and try to really help as many businesses as we possibly can through different promotions and just answering questions, being an ear on a phone call or in person, and to just try to help everybody navigate this ball of fun that we've been dealing with here. Also continue working through the CDBG grant process, talking with people, as we've already talked about it, at length, that it's difficult, but we're moving on and look forward to seeing what you do later with that. As Mr. Raymond mentioned earlier in regards to nail salons, this afternoon the phone just started blowing up because everybody thought all the nail salons were opening up. So I wish the news would put, except in LA County, we're going to do this. It would make life much easier. But I have talked to several this afternoon, business owners they really just need to open with regards to salons. And we posted that information. And so we'll stay on top of it to, when it does change, people will know. Again, just like to remind everybody to shop local as much as possibly can. People are doing a really good job, especially with our restaurants and stuff. I mean, they're doing well out, especially in the village and around town. But just that purchase could be what makes it where that business can make it another day or another month. So just as a reminder of that. And also this past week, we had a town hall that went over all the ballot measures, Measure Y, the bond for Citrus College. And then and it was very well attended. Thank you to those who were there. A recording of that is on our YouTube page, or you can visit glendora-chamber.org/2020 ballot. And there's that video, place where you can find your ballot, and a bunch of videos from Cal Matters that go in short detail of each ballot measure. So again, the chamber's here trying our best to help. And if there's anything we can do for you, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak in public comment? Hearing none, we'll close public
At this
comment.
time, there is none. Sorry, Mayor.
That's all right. We'll close public comment and we'll bring it back to council for reports and statements. Mendel?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to echo Joe's thoughts to shop and eat locally I know that most of us are attempting to do that, but anything more that we can do, that would be great. I want to just extend my prayers and thoughts and support to everybody that's been fighting the fires around us, and kudos to them, safety to them, strength to them, and we hope and pray that these fires will soon cease. I know that everybody knows that the goal line continues to do their work, and happy that work is continuing to go well, and appreciate the patience that everybody is showing, and we just continue to hope that goes as well as it's going now. And lastly, I just want to echo, I think, what everybody feels, and that is a hearty voice of support for our students, our teachers, the parents, as they begin to start a new year and adapt to all of the things that they're having to adapt to. I know it's very, very hard, and I just want to let them know that we're supporting them in any way that we can. And as Adam said, the best way for change to occur is obviously for the infections to go down, but to have your voice heard. And so continue to speak up, and hope that will help us. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mendel. Gary?
Well, again, just to reiterate, the issue with the schools reopening, it's really important for everybody to understand that the teachers have taken on a tremendous task. And not only are they trying to figure out a new way to work through these systems, they also, many of them have their own children that they are dealing with that are doing homeschooling as well. So as we look around, we need to remember that we're all in this together. I know that's a cliche, and I know we're tired of hearing it, but it's a fact. Everybody that you see every day is dealing with issues very similar to what you and I are. And we need to be patient with each other. I'm seeing more and more people that are on edge, and they want to report other people that might be doing things, or they'll want to take a stronger stance. Just keep in mind, we're almost through this. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's really important that we continue to work together on it. Also want to announce that this coming weekend, the public marketplace is going to be opening up down at the corner of Arrow Highway and Sunflower. So, even in a time of pandemic, you got new businesses open up, and excited to see them moving forward. So this will be exciting to town. And Joe, I want to make sure that you noticed item 5 on our agenda tonight. It's in our consent calendar. Okay. So the roof of the chamber building has been struggling for a long time for anyone who's not up to it, and we're finally able to get that taken care of. So that's some good news. Things are moving forward. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to recognize and applaud the city staff's efforts to get back to work live and face-to-face with the citizens of Glendora, and I know they're anxious to do that. Thank them for making those efforts. I also applaud the grand opening of the Glendora Public Market. It looks to be fun. Can't wait to go. And the rest of the businesses for hanging in to keep making the best effort they can to serve our community and be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Josina, hopefully you can put away your bucket soon. We're gonna hope for that. And I know that my healthcare provider has been sending me messages on a regular basis to remind me to get a flu shot. So that's just another reminder to everyone as we face the pandemic, that getting those flu shots will really help as we approach the fall. And coming up on October 7th, Citrus Valley Realtors, California Association of Realtors and Union Station will be putting on a fabulous webinar. We have excellent panelists who will be talking about understanding housing vouchers. So especially now in these trying times for landlords to understand what's involved if they accept Section 8 vouchers and how that is really helpful to those seeking housing. So October 7th, 10 a.m., if you go on one of those websites of those 3 groups I just named, you can register for that event. And there'll also be more information on social media about that. So, and I think that perhaps Director Stone might be making a plug for Battle of the Books. So I will leave that to her to do, but thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Last week at our Mayor's Coalition meeting, we had a productive meeting with Senator Melissa Melendez on many issues. They also included a discussion on the Latterman Act, where we decided to place this topic on our next agenda, which will be coming up this Friday. The Latterman Act came about in the 60s and has been amended several times that focuses on protecting the civil rights of the mentally ill. However, this very same bill is also making it extremely challenging to give mental care to our homeless population as well as others. So there's definitely more to come, and I'm really excited about seeing how we can make some progress on this, because it's it's kind of a shame that some of these folks out there that you want to be able to give them some help, but the way the system works is next to impossible to be able to give that help to those folks. Secondly, I'd like to have a shout out to Allison Sweet. Thank you very much for taking care of the signal over there on Grand and Sierra Madre. It's working perfectly now, so thank you very much for that. I'd also like to lend my support and happiness and gratefulness to staff for finding out and figuring out a way to fix the chamber roof. I know it was a challenging situation for funds, plus it's quite an old building. So thank you so very much for taking care of that. It's much appreciated. So with that, it takes us to reordering of the agenda or any additions. Does anyone care to reorder the agenda? No? Hearing none, this brings us to the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to poll or comment on anything?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
Second, Mendel.
Madam Deputy City Clerk, you want to take a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, a second by Councilmember Thompson, and I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Alawas.
Yes.
And the motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvia. This brings us to unfinished business, item number 7, a continuation of a discussion of possible repurposing of the CDBG-CV funds. I'd like to invite Economic Development Manager Valerie to give a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. So as mentioned, this is an update on the CDBG-CV Community Development Block Grant COVID-related business recovery program. It's a continuance from the last council's meeting. Next slide, please. So just a really quick recap. Under the CARES Act, the CDBG program was granted money in order to go ahead and prevent, prepare, and respond to COVID-19. The city of Glendora received $179,204, of which 20% we were able to use for administration of the activity. On May 12th, council went ahead and approved a business recovery program, of which $143,363 was allocated to the activity itself, the remainder to administration. And as mentioned earlier, and as we've discussed in the past, there are a lot of strict regulations and requirements under CARES Act and CDBG. It's been difficult to approve. So to date, we've approved one business, an amount of $14,862. So tonight we are going to discuss the future of this funding and options that are available. So next slide, please. So since the last meeting, actually, we've had an update. HUD has went ahead and posted the amounts for the third round of CDBG-CV funding. On September 11th, they posted on their website that Glendora would be additional funding of $266,983. So we didn't receive anything in the second round, but add that to the first round, and now we have a total of $446,187 of CDBG CV funding to go ahead and program and work with. Next slide, please. So the options that we will go ahead and review are first of all, the business recovery program. That's the first that we move forward with. We can continue with the funding that was already established, or we can reduce that funding and add an alternative additional activity, or we can terminate the program altogether and redistribute all the funding as well as the additional. We talked a little bit at the last meeting about the possibility of using it to house homeless and also for testing for COVID-19. And then we talked a little bit about emergency rental assistance, of which it seemed that council was interested in pursuing and looking a little further into that option. So we'll get into that a little bit. And then just as a reminder, these funds still need to meet a national objective, and that is to provide a benefit to low to moderate income individuals. Next slide, please. So this would be the recommendation for council to consider this evening. I know it was kind of thought maybe we'd keep some funding in the business assistance program. So if we were to go ahead and reduce that amount to $44,862, that would leave $30,000 for assistance to 2 additional businesses, which it actually would align really well with our 5-year consolidated action plan, which sets the goal of helping out 3 businesses. So that $44,000 already takes into account the 1 business that we've assisted, and then to go ahead and place $312,000 into the emergency rental program. And then 20% of those amounts would be for the administration of the 2 programs to go ahead and come to the combined total of the $446,000. Next slide, please. So as far as the emergency rental assistance, this would be for households that need financial assistance because they've been impacted negatively financially through COVID-19. We would go ahead and help them with rent. As we have heard from other cities that have a similar program, it does need a lot of interaction, helping these people gather the documentation and screening to see who qualifies. So we are looking for a partner, whether that be an external organization or another staff within the city that might be able to help. So we've reached out to a couple and have some interest, but no commitments yet. But I think that we'll be able to find somebody to help out with this. And then we'll need to go ahead and develop the forms and documents, including the program information, make some handouts, get together the guidelines and requirements, and then train the staff or the partners that we work with.
Looks like Valerie's frozen in time.
I think we lost her video. Valerie? Yeah. I'm going to go check on her right now.
Elvia, do you mind heading to the next slide, please?
Certainly.
You want to take over, Adam?
Sure, not a problem. Be happy to do so. I know Jeff's on the phone call as well here, so when Valerie comes back, we'll try to do her proud. So as Valerie was indicating, staff will come back at a later date with all the program details and requirements. These specifically detail how the program would have to operate. So we'd have to have a documented loss of income to COVID. Some of the examples of the impacted industries are those we know very well, from hair salons to retail, gyms, personal services, hotels, movie theaters, which still have not opened, and restaurants as well. We'd have to make sure that the people qualified under the various income requirements. And then we would look at how much assistance would be provided. For example, the minimum we've seen out there is $500. We could look at an amount of equal to $1,000 amount. As Valerie indicated earlier in round 3, HUD also made some changes and talked about assistance, not just up in 3 months, but up to 6 months. And I think 6 months of assistance
Yeah.
would provide some significant help in people's lives. So Valerie looks like, or Jeff looks like Valerie now. So we'll turn it back over. And Valerie, we got through some of the items on this slide and talked about the recent decision of HUD to look at expanding the program from 3 to 6 months.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm repeating what Adam already said, but yeah, so it'll be limited to renters, the eligibility of the program. And again, we do need to make sure that the loss of income is due to COVID-19. Just an example of some of those who would be impacted and probably be qualifying for this are those that work in the retail industry, salons, personal services, hotels, maybe people in the entertainment industry or the movie theaters, gyms and fitness centers, and even restaurants. And again, households do have to be low income, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There are different thresholds as far as what we want to set those guidelines at. And then also the guidelines will need to be set as far as how much assistance we want to provide them with that dollar amount per month, as well as how many months we want to assist with. Typically, it's 3 months that we can assist with, but under the CARES Act, that has been extended to 6 months if we want to. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, when we go ahead and set the eligibility guidelines or requirements as far as the income, we can go ahead and set that for extremely low, low, or moderate. It is based on household size. You take the total amount of people in a household and the total amount of incomes combined. And, you know, just for example, a household of 3, you'll see that an extremely low is 30,450. A low income is 50,700 and moderate is 81,100. Taking a look at some of the other cities that are surrounding us, they are using the moderate income level as their threshold. I know the county, I think, is using low and extremely low, but the cities in our area are using moderate. Next slide. And then as far as how much, what the maximum we want to help these households with, it's open to a set dollar amount per month, or we can do a flat maximum amount. Other cities are doing $500 to $1,200 per month. Most are doing 3 months. As I said, we can do up to 6. And the county has a set fee of $7,500 for low income or $10,000 for extremely low. Again, the recommendation is to put $312,000 towards this program. So I put a table together that just kind of gives you an idea of how we go ahead and set that methodology. So for example, if we did $1,500 for up to 3 months, that would be a total of $4,500 per household, and we'd be able to assist up to 70. If you want to do $1,000 for 3 months, then we're looking at assisting possibly 104 households. So this is something that council has any input on how they want to structure that. We can take that into account as we develop the program. So next slide, please. So an example of the documents that we will be requiring, we will need to go ahead and get an application together. We'll need to document the loss of income, make sure that it does trail and it is linked to COVID-19. Request tax returns and pay stubs. We'll need 3 prior and 3 current, again, just to document that there has been a loss. The current lease agreement, and then some information from the property owner or the management, including a W-9, a participation agreement, and then a statement with what the balance due is. Next slide. So with council's approval and direction, we'll go back and develop the complete program, go ahead and work on getting a commitment from a group to go ahead and assist with the program operation. We'll also need to go ahead and post a public notice of the program on the website for a public review and comment period, and then come back to council in November with the program and the amendments that will be required to submit to HUD. We'll need to include the 3rd round in funding, the change in the activity, and then we'll also need an amendment to go ahead and add public service, which is the rental assistance that's not currently included in our 5-year consolidated plan. Next slide, please. So again, I just wanted to show you this slide so you can see the recommendation of the breakdown. Council can change this. It's just a recommendation. Again, just keeping a minimum in the business assistance to go ahead and help 3 total businesses, put the rest towards emergency rental assistance, and then that 20% to administration. Next slide. So that concludes this report, and we'll return it to council so that you can go ahead and provide direction for the first and third round of funds allocated to the CDBG CV program. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Valerie, for the good report. I'll bring it back to council. Gary, do you want to start us off?
Well, a couple of questions. Do we have the ability, would this program be limited strictly to residents of Glendora, or would we have the ability to maybe help people that work in Glendora, but may not live in the city?
I believe it's just for residents within the city of Glendora. This is allocated for our city.
Okay. And then another question I have is, you know, one of the issues that so many business people are dealing with, small business people and micro business people, is there's not a lot of help available for those individuals. There's help available for those individuals to continue to pay their employees and pay their bills. But is this a program that could be available to business owners?
You're talking about for commercial rent, or?
No, I'm talking about there are business owners that are renters. Believe it or not, most people think business owners are wealthy, and they're not. I would venture to say that the majority of business owners are probably also renters. And because they wouldn't be receiving paychecks, is there an ability to be able to justify their need if this were a case?
I think if they live in the city, that would be the option. I think if they're having a business here and they live elsewhere, if that's the question, that wouldn't align with the program.
Okay, and then as we talk about, there's a lot of talk about independent contractors in California right now. Do you see there being a possibility of them being able to qualify for this when they're not receiving regular paychecks? Is there a workaround in there?
So we're talking about the rental assistance program for,
yes.
You know, the goal is for these people to live in the city. So anybody that lives in the city, whether they're an independent contractor or they're a business owner, they're self-employed, we're just looking at their income. And if they meet that income threshold, they're going to qualify regardless of what it is that they do, if they're a business owner or if they're an employee.
But just for an example, an independent contractor is not going to get a paycheck every week. So they're not going to have paychecks to show, you know, their income has been affected.
I mean, there's alternative things we can look at. We can look at bank statements. We can see what their bank statements were, the deposits that they made prior and the deposits that they make after. We can, you know, probably do a profit and loss also, but I think the bank statements is probably going to be the key to showing us what they're depositing.
Okay, and then on another hand, we're going to have a lot of workers that may rely on tips that are going to need this type of assistance. Is that a similar type of thing that we may be able to look at paychecks in conjunction with bank statements?
You know, I guess we can be creative, and again, we'll have a standard list of documentation. If there are unique circumstances and we can document in some way, again, that might go back to bank statements. They may be able to show us that in December, they deposit, you know, October, November, December, we probably asked for 3 months, that they had an average of this deposit. And they can say most of that was coming from tips, or a bulk of it was coming from tips. And then after it was decreased, the bank statements are going to be much less, the average on the deposit. We can look at things like that to go ahead and show that there was an impact to their income.
Okay, and then, you know, this is one of those things that I take a look at it and my personal beliefs. This is probably not the business that the government should be in a normal world. But right now, this is federal money that's available to us. It's still taxpayer money. It's coming out of every one of our pockets. And it's taxpayer money that's being delivered to local cities around the country in order to help in situations like that. So for that reason, I think it's really important that we figure out ways to try to expedite something like this to make it happen. So those are all my questions for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Mendel?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And I certainly applaud staff's effort to come back in a very short time with the options that you have shared. I certainly don't want to spend time now building this out. I have the confidence in staff to find either the staff within or outsource it to, build this. And so I fully, I support this. And as Gary said, I don't think that really the government needs to be doing this, but we are in times that we've never seen. And with the federal funding like this, I think it's the duty that we have. A couple of questions that I have. So if any of these have received PPP loans, are they still, able to get rental assistance, or does that eliminate them?
That's not going to, that wouldn't impact them or disqualify them because it's not a duplication of funds. Those funds were used for business. These funds would be used for rental. So it would not disqualify them for the rental assistance.
Great. The thresholds that you saw or that you set, were those set by HUD, the federal government, or are those the thresholds that the county has set or that we've set in terms of the low and moderate levels of income?
So that table is established by HUD. So we don't have that, but we can determine if we want to do extremely low, or moderate. And that's why I gave you that different range. So the numbers are set, but as long as it's under moderate, they will qualify. And then it's up to us to say how low of an income do we want to make this program.
Do we have to choose one, or can we say we'll choose two, or we can serve them all?
Well, if you say that it's moderate, then if you're extremely low and low, you're also going to qualify. So moderate would be would give us the greatest ability to help as more people.
Okay, and that's certainly what I want. My last question is on rental assistance. So does the landlord, so if the Joneses get $1,000 a month for 3 months and their rent is $1,250 and they can only pay $1,000, does the landlord have to accept the $1,000 or modify the rental agreement which they have, or is the landlord completely out of this?
Well, if we're going to assist with $1,000 and the rent is $1,250, the renter is going to have to come up with that difference, that $250.
Okay.
Is that answering your question?
Yeah, the question was, I just didn't know if the landlord had to be a party to whatever the transaction was. And I was hoping that that's what you would say, but I wanted to ask the question. Lastly, I would support $1,000 a month for 3 months. Certainly I would support it for 6 months, because I think that the people that are going to apply are in dire straits. And I think that the essence of HUD and what this money's for is to help exactly those kind of folks. And so I would certainly want to support as much as we can for as long as we can. And so others can speak into that, but I would certainly say that at a minimum, I would like us to be at $1,000 a month. And so with that, I certainly support this and hope that we can get this passed and that the staff can come back as soon as you can with everything worked out. So thank you.
Thank you, Mendel. David?
Thank you, Valerie, for the great report. And again, the short timeliness of gathering such good information. I hope and pray that all your work is beneficial to the point where we can actually deliver some of these wonderful program opportunities and find people that can in fact qualify to the difficult qualifications. Hope that works. If we decide that we're not able to meet all of those opportunities but still have funding, is there an opportunity that we could use some of that money to offset our temporary homeless shelter funding? We're paying for some hotels now and have been for some time. Could we apply some of that if we end up with funding left and don't have a exhausted source?
Yes, I believe we can, because these funds can be used for reimbursements of funds already spent. So we will be able to look at that later if we still have funding available.
Okay, yeah, I would hope we can in fact utilize the funds toward the rental assistance, but that's good. I have no other questions. Thank you. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you, David. Karen?
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. I was going to ask some of the same things that Mendel did. I would say definitely, given what the cost of living is in the fine city of Glendora, that definitely we need to include moderate. And then also, my thought is if we're going to help folks, we don't want to set them up to fail. So I would want to at least give folks $1,000 for 3 months. I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are, but I want to make sure that what we're giving them can help get them out of this situation rather than just, be a drop in a bucket. Sorry, Josina, but I want to make sure that it's definitely going to be helpful. So I don't know, in the perfect world, we want to help as many people as we can with as much as we can. So as your chart showed us, trying to find that middle ground to do that.
Is that it, Karen?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Valerie, thank you again for doing such yeoman's work in such a short amount of time. It's quite a bit to undertake. I'm generally in support of this, but I have some questions. How long roughly does it take to process one of these in your estimation? We talked briefly about that last time, about the business side of it.
Right.
I'm concerned about you and staff time if you're going to get overburdened. And on top of that, if you do happen to find a partner, do we have enough monies that we can, the 20% we can take off for administrative? Is that enough money to attract another party to help us with this?
So to your first question, as far as how long it's going to take to work with each applicant, that will be determined. I'm going to say it's probably going to take several days and coming a lot of back and forth, working with them to gather everything. So I would say with each individual, by the time you're calling back and forth, following up on documentation, getting the agreements together, getting the finances, working with finance, we're probably looking at maybe a week with each applicant that would apply for it. And as far as the amount of funding that we have available, the 89,000, we'll work and see who we can get and what kind of agreement we can come to with some of the external or internal staff, and see how we can split that up, or if anyone's willing to volunteer. We have to work on those details still as far as the breakdown of that funding. But it's, like I said, it's about 89,000 that we have for the administration of this.
Do you think that would be enough in your opinion, or is it too early to tell?
It's too early to tell. It's probably, I would say it won't cover it all. I think there's going to be some staff time that's just going to be, taken in by the city for something like that.
And Mayor, I would add that if this is a recommendation and approval of the council, that, that's how staff would then take its marching orders and figure out ways to make that happen. But appreciate the concern for city staff. And as we talked about at the last meeting, there's a substantial consideration anytime you're dealing with federal funds and a myriad of requirements, regardless of how this money is utilized, which is why oftentimes our regular CDBG fund ends up in CIP projects to help out in certain census tracts with street projects. So in this, given the fact that we can help numerous people actually with the additional round of funding, we hope to both attract a partner and then figure out a way internally how we can make staff make it work.
Okay. Thank you for that. So it's fair to say that this will be brought back to council with a final plan of sorts?
We'll put together the program in detail and bring it back. I would say the second week of November. We'll shoot for that.
Okay, that's a lot of work. I'm also in favor of both Mendel and Karen's suggestion of $1,000. I think that's probably the right amount to go forward. So with that, I have no further questions. So I'll bring back.
Michael, if I may.
Yes, sir.
You know, one additional question, I don't know, Valerie or Adam, you may know, because there are a lot of renters in a position right now that are behind on their rent. And the only reason they're still in their homes is because of eviction moratoriums. Is there any possible way to include something in this package that we would be able to allow people to use funds to get caught up on past due rent as opposed to for rent moving forward?
That we will go ahead and do that. So we will cover back rent if that's the case. And so if people are behind 3 months, and if that's the direction council wants to give is 3 months, we can go ahead and do the 3 months in arrears and help them with that. Right now, we're already 6 months in. So even if council wanted to do 6 months, that's a possibility as well.
So my question to Mendel and Karen, your recommendation of $1,000 for 3 months, would it be possible to, could you guys support if somebody is in arrears? I look at 3 months moving forward because we're hoping that 3 months from now, we are going to see some sense of normalcy back and you know, that light at the end of the tunnel we're talking about. But if somebody's in a situation, if it would be possible to extend that for maybe up to 6 months, if we're dealing with people that are in arrears, because I foresee that we are going to have a tidal wave of evictions as soon as the courts start to allow them again. And it'd be nice to be able to keep some people from being there.
No, I would definitely be in support of 3 to 6 months and allow that flexibility for staff as they work with the individuals. That's what I was alluding to, that I don't want it to be just a little Band-Aid. I want to make sure that they can be whole and stay there.
Ditto that.
Yeah, and then the other question, go ahead, Michael.
We also have to take into account if we do extend it to longer than 3 months, that reduces the number of people we can help, correct?
Correct.
It would, yes, yes.
Go ahead, Gary.
My other question is, would we have the availability to have something in this program that if we were to bring somebody current or do something to help someone get current, I'm just sort of thinking out loud, if somebody is behind $6,000 in their rent and we're able to help them with $1,000 a month for 3 months in back due rent, would we have the ability to have something in there that might say to the landlord, if we do this, this tenant would be required to be considered current? So again, I am a landlord, but the idea of giving landlords money for rent that is past due only to see them continue with the eviction as soon as the moratorium is lifted does not serve our purpose. So I'm just wondering if legally, if we might be able to have something that could be an agreement for the landlords to accept this money as well.
Do I hear you proposing an eviction moratorium?
Oh my goodness.
Well, now that would
I'll
be.
second that.
But we need to keep, we need to figure out a way to keep people in their homes and keep landlords from losing their homes, the properties that they own as well. So I'm just wondering legally, I don't know if that might be a question for Bill. Could we possibly put a caveat like that on any type of a program that paid people in arrears?
I don't know, but I doubt it. We can look at that and give you a legal opinion.
So I can follow up with Bill and see if that's something we can put together when we work with the landlord, because we will require documentation from the landlord. So I can follow up with Bill and look into that and see if there's a possibility to say, if you participate in this agreement, then you agree to give the tenant so many months to catch up with whatever additional money is in arrearage before proceeding with an eviction. We can follow up on that and bring that back in November.
Okay, I think that'd be important to be in here.
I would support that. Yeah.
I think that's a nice idea, but if we add too many conditions to make the qualification complicated, we might end up defeating the intent of what we're trying to do.
Well, and we're talking federal money too. So federal money comes with its own strings and usually doesn't let you add your own strings.
Valerie, as a follow-up question, will there be an acuity test to this as far as helping the worst off first?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear
That's
you.
all right. Bill interrupted us there.
Yeah.
Will there be an acuity test to this at all, helping the worst off first?
If that is what you would like to do, we can maybe set a date as far as when we will go ahead and issue approvals, because we don't know if we're going to have a flood of calls or if it's going to trickle in. So if we want, once we go ahead and get the program running, we can go ahead and say we'll go ahead and make a decision. And I don't know, we can determine if that's 2 weeks, a month, 4 weeks, and then go ahead and do it from there. If that's something council wants to direct, we can do it that way. But that's at your direction.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I would move to instruct staff to move as quickly as possible to provide rental assistance at $1,000 per month up to 6 months, and bring all of the proposed attachment back to the council by, and I don't know, Adam or Valerie, you can put a date on that, but that's what I would move.
I think Valerie
Second.
indicated the second meeting in November, but as all things are considered with this, we'll try to move as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Elby, you want to take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will take a roll call vote now to move forward with the development of a program for the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus CDBG CV funds, considering $1,000 a month for 3 to 6 months, which will include rental and arrears assistance, and to follow up on feasibility of an agreement with landlords at the November, I believe you said, meeting.
The second meeting in November.
Second meeting in November. We have a motion by Councilmember Thompson, a second by Councilmember Boyer. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Alawas.
Yes.
And it passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvia. This brings us to item number 8, new business. Approve amendment number 1 to agreement for services between the City of Glendora and Parking Concepts, Inc., DBA Transportation Concepts for transit operations and maintenance. I'd like to invite Transportation Manager Stephen Mateer to present the staff report.
Great, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council. Tonight we're talking about amendment number 1 to our transit maintenance and operations contract. Next slide, please. To give you an idea of why we're requesting the contract modification, pre-COVID, we were operating at about 17,500 average service hours per year. We had our standard fixed route service as well as our dollar ride, which operated 7 days a week. Next slide, please. Due to the pandemic restrictions, our service hours have been reduced to now about 10,500 service hours, so very dramatic reduction. We are continuing to operate our fixed route service, but we have suspended our midday shuttles since the schools are no longer in session. And our dollar ride has had curtailed service as well. We're still operating Monday through Friday with limited Saturday service and no Sunday service. Next slide, please. This chart illustrates the dramatic change not only in our service hours, but our boardings. We were doing pretty good in quarter 1 and quarter 2. However, quarter 3 is about when the pandemic lockdown started. And as you can see in quarter 4, it was during full lockdown. So really our ridership is down to pretty much only essential medical trips, as well as essential travel to the goal line. Next, please. The current contract was executed in March of 2017. It ran through fiscal 22 with two-year options to extend it to fiscal 26. The current method of compensation is an hourly rate, which includes both fixed and variable costs. However, if there's ever a change of plus minus 10% of service hours, that can trigger renegotiation. Next slide, please. In terms of what's covered by the current contract, it covers personnel, so that is your drivers, dispatch, as well as project manager, maintenance. All maintenance on the vehicles is covered, as well as a mechanic and replacement vehicles should our vehicles go down. Lastly, we have administration, so that covers insurance, our compliance reporting, fare collection, as well as customer service. Next slide, please. The proposed amendment only changes the method of compensation for fiscal 21. It moves to a monthly fixed fee of $25,138 and a service hour rate of $27.61. All other contract provisions remain in effect. So for example, maintenance is not impacted at all by this change. Next slide, please. The reasons why we're recommending this is that it reduces the overall contract cost for Glendora, given the fact that both of our revenues from fares as well as the local return that funds our program is reduced. Gives us additional flexibility to adjust service as levels increase or decrease. And it prevents us from having to re-procure a contract from the vendor deciding to end the contract. Transportation Concepts approached us with this idea as a way to stabilize their operations and to provide revenue certainty, as well as to have them continue to fulfill the requirements of their contract. Next slide, please. So this is the item before you to request, and also note that we have Rich and Brian on the phone from Transportation Concepts who can answer any more detailed questions you might have from them. And with that, I can take any questions we have.
Thank you, Stephen. Gary?
One question I had as I was looking at this is there, as we have reduced service hours, has that reduced man hours for our vendor?
Yes, and I can, if Rich or Brian wants to jump in, we have furloughed a number of drivers, as well as reduce the hours of the full-time drivers who currently drive.
Okay, so if that is the case, one of the questions that I have is, by making this adjustment to the contract, is that going to make a difference in being able to bring some of these people back, even though they may not be driving as much as they are? Because if there's a savings in salary to the vendor, I'm not sure that we have a responsibility to make that up on our end. And so I guess I would just like to hear exactly where that savings is on the vendor's part.
Sure. I don't know if Rich or Ryan, if you guys want to jump in.
Sure. Yeah. This is Rich Rogers, Chief Operating Officer for Transportation Concepts. The variable is where the drivers are at. The variable hourly rate. By renegotiating this, we've reduced the variable hourly rate. So it basically just covers the driver wages and their benefits, as well as maintenance running cost. It does not allow for us to bring back the drivers. So it's basically, it continues. It's actually a reduction in the overall cost, as Stephen had alluded to, which provides the city with a savings. All we're trying to do on the fixed costs is to capture the costs that don't change as a result of the reduced service. And that's the vehicle insurance, the administration costs, such as the project manager and the dispatchers, because they're continuing to maintain the phones and operate based on the regular service schedule. But it's the vehicle service hours that have been reduced. And thus, that's why the hourly rate is down, and it reduces the overall cost to the city.
Okay, so I guess, Stephen, one of the things I'm not seeing on the report, we're estimating that our service hours are down to about 10,000 hours
That's correct.
annually, if based on our current service.
Mhm.
I know it's not going to work out to that over a year's time. Hopefully, we're not still dealing with this next March. But do we have an estimated savings that would be in place if that were those were the numbers that we continued at?
So looking at in the staff report, table 1 looks at the comparison at full service to full service. We would save, looks like about, I'm gonna say $60,000 in fiscal 21. Given the current service rate, I haven't quite looked at that. I believe it comes out to about the same. I know currently on the because our hours are so low, just going straight off of the current service hour rate, there's very little revenue coming into Transportation Concepts. Whereas having this fixed rate basically stabilizes, again, as Rich alluded, the costs that have to be here. So the fact that the dispatcher has to be here to take the calls. So we'll be watching those costs over the year. And as I noted too, this only is for fiscal 21. We'll have an opportunity to revisit fiscal 22 in the later years as we go forward.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Gary. David?
Thank you. That picks up a point I was curious in. So by dealing with fiscal 21 and we get back to normal service and the company is back at the levels they were looking at, we would revisit whether going back to the first plan or staying with an amended version of this is best for both parties. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Well done, and thank you to the vendor for being proactive and trying to work with us.
Thank you, David. Mendel?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
No questions.
I have no questions either. Madam Deputy City Clerk, can you read the motion, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Currently, the motion is to approve amendment number 1 to the agreement for services between the City of Glendora and Parking Concepts, Inc., DBA Transportation Concepts, dated July 1, 2020 for transit operations and maintenance, and to authorize the city manager to execute the amendment number 1 following approval as to form by the city attorney. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I heard a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Davis, second from Councilmember Friedendahl. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Alawas.
Yes.
And the motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvia. This brings us to item number 9, consideration of a resolution expressing opposition to proposed housing legislation and expressing support for action to further strengthen local democracy, authority, and local control. I invite Community Development Director Jeff Kugel to present the staff report. Jeff?
Okay. So my understanding, this was an item that was requested by Councilmember Boyer, I believe, to prepare a resolution expressing opposition to the various pieces of legislation related to housing that the state has been adopting in recent years, particularly those items of legislation that, comparatively speaking, are more aggressive with respect to, overtaking local control of land use and development issues. It's also a desire to express concern or opposition with the process that the state has been going through for many decades regarding the allocation of housing units that all cities in California have to plan for. And because of the crisis identified by the state, the number of units that the region has to plan for and the city of Glendora has to plan for is actually about 3 times greater than the previous cycle that we had to plan for. The upcoming housing element cycle is what it's called. We are coming up on the end of the 5th cycle. This planning part of the state law became part of the law in the early 80s. And we are currently ending the 5th cycle since that law began, and entering the 6th cycle and having to plan for over 2,000 units. Now, this is a planning number. It's not a production or construction number. Again, this, aside from that, the resolution speaks to opposition that the city has in general to laws that the state has been adopting relative to development, housing development, and local zoning, control over local zoning of how we set our regulations in the future. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Jeff. Gary, you want to bring this to the floor?
Yeah, I'm the one that made this request, and I appreciate your seconding it, Michael. But we're in a situation in which, unfortunately, Sacramento is stepping into taking over so much control over local municipalities, and especially the housing legislation. There is so much new housing legislation that is passed year after year after year after year, and we do not have an opportunity to even see how last year's new legislation is going to work before they come up with new legislation the following year. The League of California Cities was created for the sole purpose of trying to help local cities continue to have control over a lot of the things that are in the best interest of our residents. If you want to look at extremes, the city of San Francisco does not need the same requirements as the city of El Centro. And unfortunately, that's what's happening in California today. This resolution, it doesn't really have a lot of authority or power, but I will tell you that in my opinion, there is a lot of cities that are stepping up and starting to take action like this. And we need to become part of that team to tell Sacramento that we need to have some realistic goals. We need to be able to do what each individual city feels is best for their residents. Every single city in the state of California is unique in one way or another. And unfortunately, you cannot just paint that entire state with one broad brush and try to think that it's going to work. Housing costs in the state of California continue to go up. We continue to have legislation that I use the term, we're increasing the cost of housing in order to decrease the cost of housing. And it's not making any sense. We're putting rules in place that can't possibly, you looked at the numbers Jeff shared, over 2,000 new homes are expected to be built in the city of Glendora. And that's just not possible without us making a decision to build a bunch of high rises along Route 66 or Grand Avenue or something. And that's not what a community like Glendora would like to see. So unfortunately, and I will accept the fact that this is a bit of a political statement, but it's a political statement on behalf of the local residents of the city of Glendora. And we are going to be seeing cities. I know that there's a number of cities that have already passed similar resolutions. And this is letting our representatives know that we can't continue down this road. We need to get a handle on housing in California. We need to bring down the cost of housing. We need to put new housing where it belongs and not try to force it into places where it doesn't belong. And we can make those decisions at a local level. I trust this council, our planning commission, our local residents, as I trust the residents of Torrance and the residents of Lancaster and the residents of Santa Barbara to make those decisions better than Sacramento can. So that was my request for putting this on the agenda, and hoping that we can get council support for it. And with that, I'll be happy to have any discussion.
Thank you, Gary. Well articulated. David?
I agree, Gary. Let's just say no and make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mendel?
Ditto.
Thank you, Mendel. Karen?
Yeah, and I know that this is not Mr. Boyer's point at all, because I know that he is working very hard to look at housing options. So that is my only statement in how we frame this and say it. Unfortunately, Sacramento was trying to fix a problem of too many cities saying no to housing. And so they came up with all these crazy rules that, as Gary described, has only made it worse. So I think it's important for us to say that, yes, we want local control, and that needs to be left up to the cities, but that it doesn't mean that we're saying no to housing, and that we're not saying no to a variety of housing, because as we just discussed in the rental assistance discussion, there's a variety of folks that live in the city, from renters to property owners, that need a diversity of housing to meet their needs. So that's my only comment with this, is to make sure that the message is about local control and not, doesn't get interpreted as, no to housing.
Thank you, Karen. Wow, nothing I need to add to that conversation. Madam Deputy Clerk, you want to read the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes. Currently, the motion is to review the regional housing needs assessment allocation process and adopt a City Council resolution entitled "A Resolution Expressing the Opposition to Proposed Housing Legislation and Expressing Support for Actions to Further Strengthen Local Democracy, Authority, and Control." Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Councilmember Boyer. Do we have a second?
David did.
Councilmember Friedendahl, second. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Alawas.
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
Congratulations, Gary. This brings us to our second opening of the public comment. I'd like to invite members of the public who have not had a previously opportunity to speak to address the City Council at this time. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak, Elvia?
Thank you, Mayor. No, we have not received any requests via email nor in the meeting to speak.
Then I will close public comment, and I'll bring us back now to council for council and staff items. Mendel?
Nothing. Thank you.
Gary?
No, nothing to add except the fact that pointing out to everybody, there's been discussion about all of the propositions on the ballot. Take your time, read them, understand them. There's a lot of propositions. There are a few propositions that have some really good points in them and some really bad points in them. And you have to take a look at that and try to figure out which way you want to make your decisions. But these are going to be extremely important to the state of California moving forward, and Los Angeles County.
Thank you, Gary. David?
Nothing, thank you.
Karen?
Nothing further.
Adam? Bill? No? Anyone else from staff? No? I'd like to thank the city clerk's office, Kathleen, Elvia, Lorena, Jerry, because they're the ones that actually help put these meetings together, and quite a bit of work actually goes into it, and with a lot of moving parts, particularly at the last minute. So I'm really thankful for that, as well as the behind the scenes by Greg and Craig for making this production happen. Nothing happens on its own, and that team is just amazing on making us go forward for a smooth transition. So with that, I'm going to ask our city attorney to read us into closed session. Bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and anyone participating virtually in our council meeting. In addition to the added closed session, which I've already announced when we place this on the agenda, the city council will also meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D2 or D3 and E5, because there is a significant exposure to litigation in one case. A copy of the written threats of litigation were attached to the closed session agenda. With that, Mr. Mayor, we'll ask the council to mute their audio and video and proceed to the bridge phone call, and we will take up the closed session. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Bill. With that, we're convened in the closed session at 8:38 p.m. with us, Mendel?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Elvia, ready to
Yes,
go?
Mayor. Yes, we're ready, Mayor.
So we'll reconvene the meeting to open session at 9:29 p.m. All council members are here. I request the city attorney to announce any actions taken during closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight, the council met in closed session to consider 2 items. The first item was an exposure litigation based on claims made by the Hicks Trust. The city and the Hicks Trust claimants had agreed upon a joint appraisal of certain real property. The results of that appraisal were shared with the council in closed session. Questions were asked and answered, and further authority to negotiate with the property owners of the Hicks Trust property were given to staff and the city attorney. Second, tonight, we added as an urgency closed session item because of the shortness of time between now and upcoming court hearings, a discussion of one matter of pending litigation to which the city is the plaintiff. We identified the title and location of that litigation. We briefed the council in closed session on ongoing potential settlement discussions in that litigation, and council gave us further litigation authority. Beyond that, no other action was taken on either closed session agenda item, nor was any solicited. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh,
thank you, Bill.
I'm pleased to report that in response to the Mayor Pro Tem, I have gotten my flu shot.
Good job.
One quick announcement. Remember, next month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Wear your pink to the council meetings next month. With that, we are adjourned at 9:31 p.m. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.